All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Running with Wolves. I am so excited about today's episode because I am about to give you an entire breakdown into one of my clients who started as an accelerator client of mine. She is now a consulting client of mine. And when she first started working with me, she was making anywhere between like $10,000 to $15,000 a month. And within 7 months of working with me, is now creating $120,000 per month in sales every single month, which is insane. And the cherry topper of that is we did not really increase the amount of content that she was creating at all. So all of this was with the same amount of content, the same amount of effort that she was putting in, but there were a few small strategy changes that we made to create this kind of result. So I am super excited to break that down with you because I feel like when a lot of people ask me, about working together or hitting their goals or any of those things, the assumption is that, oh, I have to put out a lot more content. I need to do a lot more. I need to pay for ads. I need to do right? No, ma'am. But what I typically tell my clients is that hustle is not the answer. Messaging is, precision is, strategy is, data analysis is. You having to put in hours and hours and hours of work in content just to hit your goals absolutely is not how you should be operating. My clients typically take about an hour a day to create all of their content across all platforms. Instagram feed posts, stories, TikTok, emails, etc., you name it, because of the strategy changes that we have made. So I'm super excited to kind of break down her journey for you because it goes to show exactly what is possible if you lock in, if you get the right messaging in your corner, if you get the right support in your corner, and make the decision that this year is your year. So, without further ado, if you're new here, this is actually like the perfect episode for you to listen to because it's going to really fire you up, I would say, for exactly what's possible for you. And if you have already been listening to my podcast, welcome back. I'm excited to really walk you guys through this client journey. So let's get into it. I want to kind of set the scene for where this client was when she first started working with me because I genuinely think it is an incredibly relatable place to be in and represents so many people who have this conversation around wanting to scale and create multiple six figures in revenue every single month. So when she first came to me, and to give you guys context, this person is in the mobile bartending industry. So she used to be a bartender, started her own mobile bartending business, and then basically now in alongside of doing mobile bartending events, she also teaches other mobile bartenders how to do that in a way that is super profitable and easy and scalable and things like that. So when she first came to me, like I said, she was probably making anywhere between $10,000 to $15,000 in sales per month. And this is some more context. When we first started working together, the only product that she was actually selling was $47, you guys. $47. And when we started working together, about halfway through, I would say she introduced an offer that was about $497. But the majority of the results that she saw in the very beginning were all from a $47 offer. None of this also incorporates her like her mobile bartending events that she did. This is strictly from her digital products. So I need you guys to understand like how massive this is. $120,000 in sales every single month from a $47 offer or a $497 offer. That's it. Nothing crazy or high ticket. So, like I said, when she first came to me, she had a solid business, a full calendar. She really was putting in the work. And that's something that I have recognized is a characteristic trait of so many of my most successful clients is they are not afraid to put in the work. They are fast implementers. They seek support consistently. They ask so many questions, but then they implement very quickly. They are some of the hardest workers that I have ever met in some of the I would say, hardest phases of their lives. So when she first came to me, like I said, she was already relatively successful, right? She had a solid business. She was making good money. $10,000 to $15,000 a month is not bad at all. She had a full calendar. She was super, super busy. She was putting out content consistently. She was a hard worker, everything. But when I asked her what her stretch goals really were, this girl did not even hesitate, mind you. And this is something that I think is also a really big characteristic of some of my most successful clients is they are big dreamers. They don't care what it's going to take in order to hit that goal. And on top of that, she had big dreams and goals, but she also was such a messy action taker. It was like the 3, 2, 1 go method. Like she literally will press go on anything if she thinks that that is going to be the thing that gets her the results that she wants. So when I asked her what her goal was, even though she was only making $10,000 to $15,000 a month, she literally did not even hesitate. And she was like, I want to hit $100,000 months in sales. She was like, I already made 20 this month. And that's a high month for me. And she goes, I'm averaging 10 to 15, but I already made 20 and I know I can make 100. I know I can make $100,000 in sales. I just genuinely do not know what that's going to look like. I don't know what that's going to take. And obviously that's why I'm here. But also, like, do you think that that's even possible for me? Right. And I, number one, was like, hell yeah, absolutely. Like, that is 100% absolutely possible for you. I was like, you have a great product. You know who you're selling it to. The biggest disconnect is really just knowing what to say to get your audience to buy. And the biggest thing for her was that she didn't have like this massive sized audience, right? Like she had, I would say, probably around 50,000 followers when she first started working with me. However, none of them were buying from her. They were all engaging with her, but there was almost really no point in her having this like large, massive audience over on TikTok because no one was actually buying. And it was really interesting. After I was like, yes, that's absolutely possible. She was like, okay, incredible. I'm in. She had been like lurking for a really long time, wanting to work with me. We had had a conversation, I think, even like a year prior, and she just like wasn't ready for the investment. So she was like, cool, I'm in, let's do it. And I was like, I love it. And she was like, I'm ready to put in the work. And I go, that's the exact attitude that you need in order to be successful. And she said something that stuck with me and I will never forget it. She goes, I get up at 4 a.m. to work. I'm ready. Like, let's fucking do this. And I was like, okay. I was like, the grind, not an issue. The work ethic, not an issue at all. Like, truly the MVP of work ethic. And so it goes to show she wasn't lacking effort. She was not lacking motivation. She wasn't lacking like the ability to create results. If she could just get the right information plugged into that work ethic, plugged into that grind, 100%, she would be making $100,000 months easily. Specifically, the kind of information that gets your content to actually convert into sales. Because for her, her content was already performing well. Her content was already creating engagement. She was just missing that one piece that would make it so that people got pushed over the edge to actually buy. So let's kind of dig in to where or like what that looked like essentially. So like I said, she had a combined audience of over 100,000 people across all platforms, right? 50,000 over on TikTok. She'd got people on Instagram, Facebook, her email list, everything, you name it. She had a great audience. The engagement was sky high. She was getting comments, likes, saves, shares. She was getting profile views. She was constantly in the mix, you guys. She was constantly creating results. But the sales was crickets, honestly. Like she would get link clicks, she would get all this different stuff. And she was like, is it my sales page? Is it, am I confusing people? Is it my content? Do I need ads? She didn't know really what was going to get people to ultimately buy from her. And this is where most people get stuck, is that lack of clarity of what's going wrong or what's going right, and either how to fix what's going wrong or how to double down on what's going right so that you create more of the same result without more effort. And a big, big thing that I hear from most people is if I can just get more eyes, if I can just get more views, if I can just go viral, if I can get in front of more people, then the sales will come. But unfortunately, More eyes doesn't equal more sales. You would be shocked the kinds of brands or businesses that I have conversations with every single day who have millions of followers. And from the outside looking in, you're like, wow, like this brand is really successful. They must be super successful. This business owner must be super successful, seeing a ton of sales. Girl, I am behind the scenes of some of the most successful brands and businesses around. I will tell you, everything is not as it seems. Most people, when they have an audience like that, do not understand what it takes to convert them into sales. And so the eyes they get, the millions of views they get, the hundreds of thousands of followers that they have, that does not equate to the money that is in their bank account whatsoever. More eyes ultimately just means that more people are watching your content. It does not mean that more people are ultimately going to convert. Now, here's the thing. And I was just having this conversation with somebody this morning. That is not a bad place to be in, right? Like, there's worse places to be in. You could have no audience, you could have no engagement. So, to have a larger audience that is super engaged enables you to see very fast results because you have a captive audience who already know, likes, and trusts your brand. And on top of that, they're consuming your content every single day, which makes it really easy to take them from a place of, I really like this brand, I love what they do, love what they have to offer, to then seeing you as the thing that they cannot live another day without, right? So, the first step when you work with me in any capacity, could be accelerator, could be consulting, could be anything, is we do an audit that, I am not going to lie, in my opinion, changes everything, right? Everyone's always like, I don't understand what's going wrong with my marketing. I don't understand what's going wrong with my sales. You're about to find out. And I don't know if you're prepared, but when we do this audit, I just had somebody join our accelerator program a couple weeks ago and we did our kickoff call. And she literally sent me a message afterwards and she was like, I don't think you understand. No one has ever asked me these questions. No one has ever looked at my data like this. No one's ever gone this in depth with my data. It it literally just from our kickoff call, and she hasn't even seen results yet because we just started working together. Like, I think her kickoff call was last week. She goes, just from that call, I have gotten my money's worth. And she goes, I am so glad I invested in you. Like, I literally walked away from that call being like, I am in the right place, 100%. So when I say this audit changes everything, I fucking mean it. And here's the thing is that there are a lot of social media managers, there's a lot of strategists, consultants, coaches, you name it, who are going to say, yeah, I'm going to audit your marketing and your sales. And they pull up your content and they look at your stories and they look at the first few posts and they say, your audience isn't connecting with you. And they say, you just need to increase your reach, or, maybe you just need to incorporate more of an engaging call to action, or, you need to create more trends, or any of those things, right? That's not an audit. When I look at somebody's marketing and sales, it is top to fucking bottom. Like, there is nothing left for us to turn over. There's nothing left for us to look at. I'm going to look at for every single platform that you are on, depending on the intention of that platform. If it's an attraction and a warming platform, I'm going to look at views, I'm going to look at follows, I'm going to look at saves, shares, comments, profile views, followers. I'm going to look at, for the conversion side of your marketing, link clicks, applications, inquiries, objections, buyer types. I'm going to look at all of that. On the actual sales side of things, I'm going to look at website traffic's on the marketing side. I'm going to look at conversion rates. I'm going to look at, where are people ghosting you? What are the top objections that you're getting? How are you responding to that in your sales process? I'm going to look at, are you overcomplicating things and overwhelming your audience? Do you have too many things on your landing page, too many things on your sales page, too many things on the link in your bio? Does your marketing actually convey how different you are from your competitor? Does it actually sell to your audience? Does it sell to them in the way that makes sense? Do you have social proof? Where in your sales conversations are you basically saying the things that they need to hear that you're not putting into your marketing? Or where are you getting stuck in that sales conversation? And how are you not handling that when you're talking to somebody or in the DMs? Is that translating the way that sales calls do, right? That's just literally a fraction of it. I'm looking at heat maps on your website. I'm looking at fucking everything. When it's like receipts, timeline, screenshots, fucking everything. That's literally what I'm looking at. You best bet your bottom dollar, like, you come out of that audit where I basically tell you, hey, based on everything I'm seeing, audience behavior, data, market research, everything, here are the top changes we need to make. And I typically give it to them in order of priorities of like what's actually going to move the needle the most, the fastest. So it's like, cool, here's the things that you need to make changes around in order to get to your goals. Here's how you're going to do that. So that I'm breaking that down into content ideas for them, brainstorming that with them, telling them what I envision for the content, everything. So it's like they walk away with a really high level understanding of what's going wrong, what's going right, how to fix it, how to double down on it, and then like the actual implementation and execution side of it. And then together, obviously, we watch, how the audience is resonating with that content, how things are changing on the marketing and sales side, and we refine and adjust as needed. But a lot of the clarity that you need comes from that audit. So with that being said, that was a real soapbox, honestly, which is kind of crazy. But here's what I will say is that the reason why we do such a deep dive into your marketing and your sales data is because, in my opinion, creating a strategy without data is literally just guessing and attaching a Canva graphic to it. And guessing is not what creates predictable, sustainable results. Could you get lucky and guess properly at some point? Yeah, absolutely. But it doesn't matter, because guess what? You can't tell me why you got those results because you don't know what triggered them, which means therefore you cannot rinse and repeat those results and you cannot scale in a predictable and sustainable way. So really quick, I want to make sure you guys are clear on how to know if a lack of clarity is your problem, because there are so many people who come to me who are making $20,000 per month, $30,000 per month, and are like, I'm not hitting the goals that I have. I'm not creating the sales that I'm looking for. I'm like, okay, cool. Where's your data? Where's your marketing? Where's all this different stuff? And they don't have answers to those questions. They just look at me like a deer in the headlights, right? So if you're somebody who, on the service-based side of things, you're posting 5 times a week, you're doing reels, carousels, story selling series, email blasts, you're on every platform. Every day is a new content idea. Every day is a new hook. Every day is a new idea that you are hoping will land. And you're sitting there and you're like, this one is going to pop, or this post 100% going to get me more DMs. My story replies were really high last week, so I'm just going to post more mindset content. But you genuinely have no clue which post led to your last sale. You don't know what your audience engages with versus what they convert from, because yes, those things are totally different. You don't know if your content will attract your ideal buyers or just internet friends who are going to sit there and be like, yay, go you. It's like, cool. Yeah, I love some cheerleaders, but I would also love some cash in my pocket, right? If you don't know who you're talking to, if you don't know if those leads are cold, warm, if they're ready to buy, if you're making content decisions based on vibes, which, like, guys, come on. What are we doing? Not visibility. And you have no system to audit your top performing content. If you're guessing, if you're overcompensating with, oh, I just need to put more content out instead of, hold on, let me pause and basically see what actually worked. If you feel like you're working so hard, but the numbers won't move, you do not have clarity into what is actually going to cause your audience to buy, which means you ultimately do not have clarity into how to create sales. Doesn't matter if sales are coming in, you don't know why. And so what ends up happening is engagement fatigue. You're like, I'm fucking exhausted. I don't want to respond to another comment. I don't want to respond to another story and be like, oh my God, cute dog, and like hope that that person ends up DMing you. No, you end up having sales inconsistency, and you're having this constant spiral every single day of like, what the fuck am I doing wrong? And trying to constantly figure it out because you don't have that clarity and you don't have those insights. A lot of times, if you're a product-based business, let's say maybe you're running like a clean beauty brand, right? That gets a ton of love on social media. You have aesthetic packaging, you have great mission, hold on. You have a great mission, you have solid reviews and results over on your website, but your sales are super sporadic. And you're like, you know what, to get sales up, like, let's do a flash sale. Or, maybe people just need more before and afters of my beauty brand. Or what if I try, TikTok shop again? Or maybe I need to lower the price point, right? But still, you're looking at your metrics. Hold on, I want to say that again. You're still looking at your metrics, but you're looking at surface level metrics. You're looking at how many likes you're getting on aesthetic product photos. You're looking at how many shares you're getting on an ingredient breakdown photo. You're looking at website traffic that spikes after you do a promotion. But just because you're looking at those things doesn't mean you know what percentage of that traffic actually adds your product to their cart or checks out. You don't know what piece of content drives repeat customers versus one-time buyers. So even if you wanted to do like an influx of cash flow, which is pretty easy to do if you've already had someone buy from you and they had a good experience, you don't know what content would trigger that. So you can't easily get more cash into your business. You don't know when and why people are dropping out of your funnel. You don't know why they're abandoning their cart. You don't know what type of content your best customer engaged with before buying. So you can't rinse and repeat that best customer. So every marketing move is literally a gamble. Your sales, it feels like your sales strategy is duct taped together with Canva templates and not real information or buyer behaviors. Which means because of that, you waste inventory, you have inconsistent months, and you have a product line that looks successful but can't scale. So what's the fucking point? So when I did this audit with my client, I had her pull the last 90 days worth of data, and I had her send me the top posts that had the most views and reach for that attraction side. With the warming content, I had her send me the top posts that got her the most saves, shares, profile visits, and follower growth. For the converting metrics, I had her send me website clicks, DMs, applications, actual sales, right? And then when I looked at that, I was able to map out audience behavior, what they're responding to right now, and what they need to hear in order to buy. My motto has always been facts over feelings or data over drama. I do not guess when it comes to marketing and sales. I investigate, I strategize, and I implement from there. And the same should go for you as well, because if you're just guessing, there is nothing that guarantees money in your pocket. The reality is that if you don't know what's working, you are constantly going to be changing what's not broken and missing out on what actually is, because you don't know how to find what's working and what isn't. The reality, you guys, that you need to understand is that data isn't sexy. It really isn't. But guessing is fucking expensive. Because let's say if you're a service-based business, you charge, I don't know, $1,000 for an hour of your time, and you spend an hour creating content that creates no sales for you, you could have made $1,000 serving a client. If you're somebody who basically, sells a skincare product, and let's say you sell like a really nice skincare kit for $497, if you knew how to actually create content that converted instead of spending an entire hour trying to figure out what the hell to talk about in terms of content, or buying new inventory, or trying to go like door to door to different med spas or things like that, asking them to carry your product, you could have probably made, I don't know, $14,000 in sales, because you know what content triggers them to buy. Instead, you wasted time and you're wasting inventory at the same time because you can't sell it. And that is exactly why that's the first thing that we do when I have clients start to work with me, is because you cannot strategize without that clarity. So then once we had the data of what really worked for her, and like I mentioned to you, the biggest thing that she was missing out on was that clarity of what was going to work for her audience to push them over the edge. But then what we really found was, in terms of her content, she was missing out on that conversion phase. You guys have heard me talk about our wolf funnel, and each of those stages within the funnel are attract, warm, and convert. She was doing attracting and warming really, really well, which is why she had a great audience. Content was performing well. They were super engaged, but she was really missing out on that conversion phase. And so ultimately, what that meant was that she was keeping her audience consuming rather than purchasing. And so we started working on creating solution selling content that spoke to her buyer types, objection handling content, and social proof. All of those categories fall into that conversion phase and are incredibly important to get people over the finish line from consuming to buying. So once we had that data, I did not sit there and be like, you should post more. I wasn't like, hey, you need to like create more content. You need to do ads. You need to do blah, blah, blah. We didn't have her rebrand. We didn't redo her whole offer. Instead, we repackaged the messaging. Oftentimes, it's not the actual like pricing or it's not the product, it's the promotion of the product or the service itself that's leading to the lack of sales. And when we repackaged her marketing, you guys, and her messaging, I shit you not, within 7 months, she had multiplied her sales and her income by 12 times. She had 12x'd her sales in 7 months. What? What? You mean to tell me that with the same amount of content and just a few changes based on what her data told us that she needed to say to get her audience to buy, she multiplied her revenue by 12 times? Babes, if you are not doing this, I don't know what you're doing, because it's the same content categories, it's the same amount of content, it's just different delivery. Because truthfully, that's the thing about messaging, is it's the difference between content that moves people and content that just keeps them entertained. So here's what I want you to think about to figure out if your messaging is really the issue. Because there's a lot of people that will come to me and be like, Savannah, I don't know, do I need ads? Do I need visibility? Do I need to change my product? Do I need to change my service? Do I need to change blah, 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 right? Do I need to rebrand? Abso-fucking-lutely not. First things first, let's start with the smallest thing that could move the needle the most, which is going to be your messaging. So if you're a service-based business and this is what's happening for you, I can guarantee you that your messaging is the issue. So if you're showing up consistently, you've got a strong aesthetic, you're not new to this, but your captions are like, oh, I help service providers write like conversion-driven emails, or let's boost your open rates and book more calls. It's clean, it's correct, it's concise, but it doesn't move anyone. Here's the reason why: because it doesn't have these pieces of information. What kind of service provider this is for, because let's be frank, if they don't see themselves in your marketing, they're not even going to consume it, which means they're not going to get the messaging that they need to hear in order to move. You're not talking about why they're struggling with copy problems or emails or open rates or booking more calls. You're not talking about why now is the time to fix that problem. And you're not talking about what life looks like on the other side when they work with you. So instead, your messaging ends up sounding like a resume rather than this like revelation or light bulb moment that your target audience should have when they consume your content, your emails, etc. You're not getting DMs. Your lead magnets aren't converting like somebody told you that they would. And you're stuck thinking like, I need to add a new offer. I need to post more. I need to niche down again. When really you just need messaging that connects the dots between your audience's pain points and what you do to solve those problems for them. And once you tighten that up, once you dial that in, you guys, boom, same content, different sales. If you are a product-based business and you have gorgeous branding, gorgeous packaging, your website is super polished, the photos are like giving luxury. Like you have spent money on a brand photographer to come take product photos for you. And you're like, everything looks like it is an incredibly successful brand. But your sales are like meh, right? Like, yeah, you're making sales. You're making 10, 20, 30K per month. But you want this to be a global brand. You want this to be like a 7-figure brand. If you are posting daily, you're showing off scent notes, right? Like let's say have like a candle brand or something, right? You're posting daily, you're showing off the scent notes, you're highlighting ingredients, you're giving behind the scenes like wax pouring content, right? Like you're showing like, ooh, look at how amazing our wax is, right? But your messaging sounds like hand poured soy candles made with essential oils and clean ingredients. The amount of times I literally prepping for this specific podcast episode typed in high-end candle brands. Literally, that's it. Luxury candle brands. That's it. Do you know how many of you guys are using that in your website, in your socials, everything. I'm like, what is the difference? So the question that you have to ask yourself, that everyone is asking, is why do I care? Okay, great. Now what, right? You've told me that you have hand poured soy candle wax. Who the fuck cares? Why do I care? Why should I spend my hard earned money on your candles versus one from Target? Like, why? You've said nothing to convince me, right? What moment does this candle create for me? What does it help me escape from or reclaim? Right now, you're giving people a product description, but it needs to feel like an experience to them. It needs to feel like a lifestyle decision. It needs to feel like a self-care, non-negotiable for them to be like, oh, $50 for a candle? You know what? Fuck it. I need that, right? So instead, if we shifted your content to say something like, you've answered 47 emails and haven't eaten today, light this, exhale, and remember who you were before your phone started buzzing. That hits. It's the same candle, it's the same sentiment, it's the same post, but you have positioned your product differently. The messaging, that messaging didn't sell your product. It made the buyer feel seen. It gave them a gap that they can't fill on their own. Yeah, sure, they could take some deep cleansing breaths, but they're still going to feel fucking stressed out. That candle, lighting it, taking a moment for self-care is actually going to improve their day, and people purchase solutions that are impactful to them rather than products. You need to know that messaging is what turns your content into a salesperson for you. I always say if you are marketing properly, people should be 90 to 95% sold by the time they inquire about your services or they go to your website to scope out your products. That way, your marketing has done all the heavy lifting for you, and there is no like convincing that they need to purchase. They're good to go. They might have a few like logistical questions, maybe one objection, but you know how to handle that in your sales conversations. And on top of that, you can reiterate that in your content to mitigate those objections moving forward. Without that kind of messaging, all you're doing is posting and praying. But with that kind of messaging, you are converting without saying anything new and without even really essentially like quote unquote selling. I wouldn't even consider that to be aggressive selling, because your content doesn't need more frequency. It needs more force, you guys. Like it needs different positioning, different messaging. So it lands and hits and is like, oh, fuck, you're right. I need that product or I need that service. So now I want to kind of break down the biggest mistakes that my client was making in her content and basically how we fixed them, and essentially how you guys can fix this for yourself as well. So number one, like I said, she was educating way too much. She was warming way too much, and she wasn't doing enough solution selling. So her content was essentially just talking about her story as a mobile bartender. And then it was really just kind of educating people on why it's such a great career or why it's such a great business, how they can do it. It almost felt like a free class, for example. There were tons of tips, how-tos. It was very like, hey, here's what I learned this week, right? But you know what was missing was clear positioning that made people feel like her offer, her digital product, was the solution that they needed now. So instead of like, wow, that was really helpful, scroll, we wanted people to think that is exactly what I need in my life in order to achieve the dreams and goals that I have. So many of these people hated being a 9-to-5er. If they were a bartender, hated working for somebody else, wanted freedom, wanted flexibility, wanted to make more money. They just didn't know the vehicle that they needed to use in order to get there. And for a lot of these people, they didn't even know that this was an option, didn't even know that they could be a mobile bartender. And so she opened their eyes so much, and then was basically like, hey, if you want to know how to do this, that's exactly what I teach people, and directed them to that digital product. She was able to position her digital product as a solution rather than just another expense for people to purchase. So an example of this for service-based businesses, if you're, for example, like let's say a brand designer, and you post nonstop carousels of like 3 mistakes you're making with your logo or fonts that are trending in 2025. Or I even saw this where it was like copy changes that we're seeing trending in 2025, right? Tons of saves, no sales. And you're like, what the fuck, right? Because the content is educational. It doesn't position your design service as the solution to a deeper problem like inconsistent branding or lost revenue or weak visuals or disjointed messaging. So if you're just saying, hey, here are the mistakes you're making with your logo, if I saw that, I'd be like, maybe would consume it. But otherwise, I'd be like, okay, why don't I just go have a brand designer do that for me? Right. Instead, if I saw your content that was like, here's the mistakes you're making with your logo, and that's why it's leading people to not ultimately buy from you because they don't take you as a brand seriously. And that's exactly what I help with. I'd be like, fuck, take my money, help me out, make sure I'm not missing out on sales, right? Versus, let's say you're a skincare brand, right? If you keep posting infographics like, what is hyaluronic acid? Or here's the benefits of retinol. Or I recently started skin cycling. What is skin cycling? How should you sandwich your retinol with moisturizer so it doesn't dry you out? Blah, 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 right? That's great for awareness, great for education. Tons of people are going to save that, but your customer isn't connecting to why they need to now spend $200 on your nighttime serum. They're learning from you. They're not buying because guess what? You just said, hey, here's how to skin cycle. And instead of them buying one of your liquid exfoliants or your chemical exfoliants and your retinol, they're going to go down to the drugstore and buy it from there and then use your method because you're now educating them and teaching them instead of saying, that's why you should buy our retinol. When you do not speak to the problem that somebody has and the urgency with which they need to fix it, you become a nice to have, not a have to have. Let me say that again. When you don't speak to the problem and the urgency with which people need to fix that problem, you become a nice to have. And nice to haves do not close $5,000 to $10,000 every single day in sales. Nice to haves don't create $120,000 in sales every single month just from their content. That is a have to have. And that is a feeling that you have to create with your messaging and your content. So the second mistake that she was making is she wasn't speaking to the buyer types that were in her target audience. And like I said, that's part of the audit, is really looking at buyer types based on market research of your target audience. Because here's the thing is like, yeah, you can sell the solution of your product or service all the live long day. But if you're not selling it to them in a way that is customized, it's going to go right over their heads. And again, you're going to be a nice to have, right? So it was really interesting because she had great content for her digital products, but her people were still watching it and thinking like, okay, that's cool, but like, is it for me, right? And the comparison that I give is like, let's say you walk into Sephora and you're like, I need a foundation. And the girl comes up and she's like, hey, like, how can I help you today? And you're like, yeah, I need to buy a foundation. Like, what's your recommendation? And she literally right off the bat goes, well, this is my favorite one, and tries to sell it to you. She didn't ask you at all about your skin tone. She didn't ask you about your texture. She didn't say, oh, are you oily or are you dry? She didn't try to color match you, nothing. She grabbed her shade of her favorite foundation, and she probably has totally different skin than you and is like trying to sell it to you. And you're like, yeah, but I don't think that's what I need. Like, is that really for me? Even the best products and services in the world, you'll assume are not a match for you if they do not feel personalized. And the same goes for your offerings. If you don't speak to people's specific motivators, hesitations, decision-making patterns, they're going to scroll right past your content and not get the messaging that they need in order to convert because it's not going to feel like it's meant for them. They have to see themselves in your content in order to consume it. And in order to get them to buy, they have to consume your content. A great example of this, if you're like a business coach, for example, would be you talk about your offer as like perfect for entrepreneurs, quote unquote, ready to grow, but you don't speak to where those people are. Are they somebody who's making $4,000 a month, who is a burnt out solopreneur, is going to hear it and think, oh, I'm not ready for that. Like, that's not for me. I'm not ready to grow. Like, I can't even grow. I don't even have capacity for this right now, right? Meanwhile, somebody who's making $30,000 a month sees it and thinks, man, that's not for me. Like, that's too low level, right? Both of them scroll past. Both of them could have benefit for that depending on what you offer. If you're a product-based business and let's say you have like a luxury bedding brand, for example, and you market a 600 sheet set with like sleep like royalty or some shit like that, right? You always see those in the ads. That works for someone who prioritizes luxury, but not for the mom of two toddlers who needs you to say like, hey, you can finally sleep through the night, even if your toddler doesn't, right? It's the same product. It's a totally different message based on who your target audience is and who their buyer types are. The third mistake my client made was that her social proof was all about her. And what I will say is that the last piece to the puzzle about this is trust. And here's the thing. She shared a lot about her story, how she built her business, her results, her growth, but there wasn't a lot of client proof of people who had purchased her guide or purchased her other products. And in 2025, if your content screams, look what I did, but it never is like, look what they did, look what my clients did, look what my customers achieved, your audience doesn't trust it. Because unfortunately, in the very early ages of COVID, there were a lot of people who became quote unquote entrepreneurs and business owners who were very talented when it came to their marketing and would constantly talk about the lifestyle they'd created, the results that they had created, and people fell for that marketing only to realize, okay, you know how to create those results for yourself, but you don't know how to create them for anybody else. And so if they don't see that you have helped other people and a diverse audience at that create those same results, they're not going to trust your marketing as much. The point is, your audience doesn't need to believe that you can do it, whatever their goal is, whether you own a product or service-based business. They need to believe that they can hit those goals with your help. If you're a fitness coach, they don't care about your weight loss journey and how you did it. Yeah, they might want to know that as like a story about your brand mission or values or things like that. They want to know how you're going to help with their weight loss journey. So something that we did was we added, client transformation stories, screenshots, before and afters, and messaging that made people see themselves in her content. But more than that, they recognized that she was able to create that same result for so many other people, which made them resonate with where that person was at, want to be where they are now, and recognize that she was the person that could help them do that. So, for example, if you're a copywriter and you keep talking about how your emails get 70% open rates and you have six-figure launches, and you never show client stories, stats, or wins to your audience, that sounds like a highlight reel, not something they can plug into, quote unquote, themselves. If you're a luxury activewear brand, right, who only posts aesthetic studio shots and captions about the founder's journey, gorgeous. Absolutely. Is it believable? Unfortunately, if there is no real proof that people are actually wearing your activewear brand, loving it, coming back for more, raving about it, there's no reviews, there's no UGC, just like, look at me, not this could be you, they're not going to purchase. So here's the result from all of that work that we did. 7 months later, 7 months, you guys, she hit $120,000 sales month. And obviously things went up incrementally when we were working together. I believe, in the very beginning, she went from 10 to 15K per month to 20 consistently, 30, 50, 70, 90, and finally 120K. And it was crazy because I remember, it still gives me chills. We were on a group call and I was just kind of checking in with everybody. And I wanted to check in with her. I was like, hey, like, how's everything going? Give me kind of a pulse check, marketing and sales, any help that you need, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, no, I don't think that I need any help, but like, I just wanted to tell you something. And I was like, okay, what's up? She goes, I'm on track to hit $120,000 in sales this month. And she goes, I don't know if you remember, but that was my sales goal, my stretch goal when I first started working with you. And I'm not kidding you guys. I started crying because to see someone's dream recognized in such a real way and know that you were a massive part of making that happen, and to know that you were a part of making that happen in such a real way is so incredibly powerful. And I was so just grateful to have been a part of that journey for her. Here's the really cool part about that though. We didn't double her hours creating content. She created the exact same amount of content since day one. We didn't overhaul her offer. We cleaned up her messaging and let it do the heavy lifting for her. She didn't just get more sales, you guys. She finally felt like her content was actually working as hard as she was. It was doing the heavy lifting. She wasn't having to have these crazy conversations. In fact, because it was such a low ticket digital product, she didn't have sales conversations with anyone. So here's what I want you to ask yourself. When you go back through this episode and you listen to the mistakes that she was making or the lack of clarity that she had, or, the messaging that wasn't dialed perfectly, to her target audience, I want you to ask yourself, number one, do you know why you are not seeing results right now from your marketing? Number two, if you are seeing results, meaning you're making $20,000, $30,000 a month, but it's sporadic, it's inconsistent, it's unpredictable, can you pinpoint why you got those sales and can you rinse and repeat those results? The other questions I want you to ask yourself is, do you know how to identify your target audience's buyer types? Do you know how to translate what that information means into a marketing strategy? Do you know how to look at your marketing and sales data and see what's going right, what's going wrong, know what that means, and interpret that and know what your target audience needs to hear in order to buy? Because if that is not the case, you are literally preventing yourself from 12xing your sales with the same amount of content. That hour every day that you are spending on content could literally make you 12 times the amount of revenue that you are making right now. And if you don't know how to do that, girl, I want to have a fucking conversation with you, because this is the thing that really gets me going about working with clients, is seeing the difference that the right marketing strategy can actually make and the right support. Because so many people have been duped into thinking that they're going to get the right support and then they don't, and they don't get the results. And something that really just gets me out of bed every morning is knowing that I'm giving that to people, knowing I'm giving them the right support, the right information, so that they can actually see those results and freaking celebrating when it happens. So if you want help with that, as always, message me over on Instagram. But even if you're not in a place where you're ready for that help, I hope that this episode was immensely helpful for you to see what's possible, but to also analyze your own marketing and sales and see like where you really need to make some adjustments to see better results with the same amount of content and effort. And as always, if you guys have questions, if there was something that was like a massive takeaway for you from this episode, please, please, please feel free to share that with me on Instagram, because I'm always just trying to pour as much as possible into this podcast, into you guys, because I really, really want you to be able to see your own results from the things that I teach you over here on this podcast. So I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. I hope this was helpful for you, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys.